I first met Ava, I thought I'd finally found the perfect roommate. She had this warm smile that made you feel like you'd known her for years. We clicked instantly. Same sense of humor, same love for late-night snacks, and the same dream: to build a better life in the city. I had just moved out of my parents' house after landing my first full-time job. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Rent in the city was expensive, and I couldn't afford it alone. So finding a roommate wasn't just an option, it was a necessity. Ava came across my ad online. Her message stood out from the dozens I'd received. Friendly, polite, and full of energy. When we met for coffee to discuss the details, she was charming, maybe a little too charming. She told me about how she had just come out of a toxic relationship and needed a fresh start. I remember feeling bad for her, maybe even protective. She seemed fragile, vulnerable, like someone who just needed a little kindness. I didn't know it then, but that pity would become my biggest mistake. The first few weeks were honestly amazing. We got along so well. It felt like we'd been friends forever. We'd stay up late watching movies, laughing until our sides hurt, sharing stories about our childhood, and complaining about work like sisters. We'd make dinner together. She'd cook, I'd clean. And sometimes we'd take spontaneous walks around the block, just talking about life and our big dreams for the future. She made the apartment feel alive, and I loved that. On weekends, we'd explore the city, find new coffee spots, and talk about saving up for a short vacation someday. I'd often tell my coworkers, Ava's not just my roommate, she's my sister I never had. I truly meant it. I trusted her completely, and for the first time since moving away from home, I felt like I wasn't alone. But looking back, there were signs. Tiny, almost invisible cracks in the picture-perfect friendship we had built. The way she'd ask a little too many questions about my salary. The times she'd casually borrow things without asking, brushing it off with a laugh. I ignored it all because I didn't want to believe anything bad about her. I was too focused on the good. Or maybe too desperate to keep the peace. What I didn't realize was that Ava wasn't just living with me. She was studying me. Every habit, every weakness, every detail about my life. She was quietly taking notes. She knew how I reacted when I was stressed, what made me feel guilty, and what I'd forgive easily. At the time, I couldn't see it. To me, she was just my bubbly, loyal roommate who'd been through a rough patch and needed a friend. But slowly behind that sweet smile and soft voice, she was building something darker. A plan that would turn my world upside down and leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about friendship, trust, and kindness. If someone had told me then that Ava would one day become the reason I'd lose everything I'd worked for, I would have laughed. I would have defended her without hesitation. But the truth is, not every smiling face is harmless. Some are masks, carefully painted, patiently worn, waiting for the right moment to fall. And Ava's mask was about to crack, revealing the storm that had been brewing all along. It started small, almost too small to notice. At first, I thought I was just being careless. A missing snack here, a shirt gone from the laundry, my phone charger mysteriously unplugged. I told myself it was nothing, that sharing a space meant things would get mixed up sometimes. But somewhere deep down, a quiet voice whispered that something wasn't right. I remember opening the fridge one night after work, craving the leftovers I'd saved from the night before. The container was empty. I blinked, confused. I could have sworn I'd left half of it untouched. When I asked Ava about it, she laughed, that same playful laugh that used to make me smile, and said, "You're too forgetful, girl. You probably finished it and forgot." Her tone was light, teasing, but something about the way she avoided eye contact made my stomach twist. Days turned into weeks, and the small things kept piling up. My favorite shirt disappeared completely. My expensive foundation went missing. I'd leave my laptop open, only to find browser tabs closed, or history wiped when I got back. And every time I brought it up, she'd joke, deflect, or make me feel like I was being paranoid. "You stress too much," she'd say, with that same grin that was starting to look more fake each day. But the real cracks didn't appear until she started twisting my image behind my back. One of my co-workers, Jenny, pulled me aside one afternoon and said, "Hey, I don't know what's going on between you and Ava, but she's been saying some things." My heart skipped a beat. Apparently, Ava had been telling people I was lazy, that I never cleaned up, that I was always broke and living off her kindness. It didn't make sense. I paid my half of the bills on time, sometimes even covered her share when she was short on cash. It was confusing, hurtful, and humiliating. I had been working extra hours, barely sleeping, trying to hold everything together. And yet, behind my back, the person I trusted most was quietly poisoning my reputation. Then came the moment that shattered everything I thought I knew. One morning, my manager called me into his office. His expression was serious, his tone heavy. "We need to talk about some emails," he said. My heart started pounding. He explained that someone had been sending messages to the HR department, pretending to be me, complaining about co-workers, saying nasty things, spreading gossip. I felt dizzy. I could barely speak. When he showed me the emails, my hands trembled. The writing style was close to mine, eerily similar, but the tone was venomous. It was like someone had studied how I wrote, mimicked it perfectly, and used it to ruin me. I left the office in shock, feeling the ground slipping from under me. That night, I called a tech-savvy friend and asked for help. We traced the IP address from those emails. My heart nearly stopped when the results appeared on the screen. It was from our apartment, the same Wi-Fi network Ava and I shared. The next morning, I confronted her. She didn't deny it immediately. She just froze for a moment, then her eyes filled with tears. She started crying, shaking, swearing she had no idea what I was talking about. She said maybe her ex-boyfriend hacked her account. Maybe someone was framing her. She spun the story so quickly, so convincingly, that for a second, I doubted myself. She hugged me, sobbing, saying, "I'd never do that to you. You're my best friend." And like a fool, I believed her. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe this was just one big misunderstanding. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that, because the alternative, that the person I lived with, laughed with, trusted, was capable of that kind of betrayal, was too painful to face. But after that day, something inside me changed. I stopped ignoring the whispers in my gut. I started watching her closely, quietly. I paid attention to what she did when she thought I wasn't looking. And the more I observed, the more the mask started to slip. Every laugh felt rehearsed. Every apology felt staged. There was a darkness in her eyes that I'd never noticed before. Something calculating, cold, waiting. I didn't have proof yet, but I could feel it. Ava wasn't who she pretended to be, and what I discovered next would not only confirm my fears, it would change everything. A few months later, the knock at the door felt different, sharper, heavier, like a pulse I couldn't ignore. Our landlord stood there, face reddened, voice clipped. "You two need to sort this out," he said without preamble. "Rent hasn't been paid in 2 months." I felt my stomach drop, as if someone had pushed me down a flight of stairs. 2 months? That couldn't be right. I'd been sending my share like clockwork. Every payday, the same transfer I'd always made. Ava handled the payments to him. She'd said she preferred it that way. I trusted her. I'd trusted her with my keys, my secrets, my bills. I dug up my bank history on my phone while he stood there, arms crossed, impatience written in every line of his face. The transfers were there. Dates, amounts, confirmation numbers. I showed him. He glanced at my screen, then at me, then at the lease in his hand. The lease was under Ava's name. Doesn't matter who paid what, he said. Legally, she's responsible. His words felt like a hand tightening around my throat. He told us to vacate in 10 days if the arrears weren't cleared. 10 days. My hand shook when I locked the door behind him. I remember the quiet after he left. The apartment suddenly too small, the air too thin. I asked Ava about it, and she shrugged, casual and unbothered, like we were debating what to have for dinner. Internet issues, she said, waving a hand as if it settled everything. I told him I'd sort it when I get paid. She used that tone that made you believe her, the one she used when she wanted to look vulnerable and helpless. I showed her the transfers on my phone, the proof of every payment. She looked at the screen, blinked, and said, "Maybe the bank glitched. Maybe it bounced." Her voice was smooth, practiced. That night she didn't come home. Hours passed. I paced the tiny living room, replaying every conversation, every small oddity that had nagged at me. The missing charger, the borrowed sweater that never returned, the offhand comments to friends that painted me as irresponsible. I felt a pressure building behind my ribs, a warning I'd been ignoring. When she finally walked through the door, it was as if nothing had happened. She hummed under her breath, sprayed herself with my perfume, the one I'd left on the vanity, and opened the fridge like she owned the place. Her smile was the same one that had put me at ease for months, but now it landed like a lie. I couldn't hold it in. I remember the words rupturing out of me, hot and uncontrollable. "You used me, Ava. You lied. You stole my money and told me I was the problem." My voice cracked on the last word. She turned slowly, the smile slipping, but not into shame, into something colder. She folded her arms and met me with a look that felt like the end of a book I hadn't finished reading. "Sweetheart," she said, and the nickname was a blade wrapped in silk. "The world isn't fair. You're just too nice to survive here." Her words landed and settled, heavy and obscene. I remember feeling stunned, like I'd been slapped into silence. Then anger flaring hot and cruel. But beneath that anger, a strange, hard clarity formed. The betrayal wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about the small, invisible currency I'd given her. My faith, my vulnerability, my sense of safety. She had taken it and treated it like spare change. That line, "You're just too nice to survive here," lodged in me and went to work. It wasn't only accusation or insult. It was a challenge, a provocation. She didn't realize she'd lit a fuse. In that moment, I decided I would not be the person who let someone else write the ending to her story. I would not fold or beg or let her shrug away what she had done. If she thought I was an easy mark, she was about to learn that the wrong person had been pushed too far. The quiet in the apartment felt different after that night. Heavy, charged, like the pause before a storm. I didn't scream. I didn't smash anything. I put on a smile that felt brittle and careful, because I knew the loud revenge, the obvious one, was exactly what she expected. Revenge works best when your enemy still believes they've won. So I learned to become quiet, to let the world move around me, while I built something that would not be undone by emotion. The first thing I did was document, not in a dramatic, cinematic way, just steady, methodical collecting, screenshots with timestamps, bank transfer records, copies of messages where she pretended to be me, recordings of conversations where she lied to friends. I made folders on a separate hard drive, labeled everything, backed it up twice. Every little theft, every casual lie, every time she spun my life into a joke for someone else. There was now a trail that could not be erased by a shrug or a sob. I learned how to read metadata, how to keep receipts, how to export chat histories without leaving a clue. It was tedious, boring work, and that boredom was its own weapon. I discovered she'd been using my photos online, creating profiles that used my face and my stories to sell things or beg for money. She'd taken my images and my identity and turned them into a side hustle while I kept paying rent and pretending everything was normal. I printed those photos, annotated them, cross-checked dates. I reached out quietly to a few of the people she'd scammed. None of them were trying to make a scene. Most were just relieved someone was finally listening. They handed me screenshots, bank statements, messages I could never have imagined would exist in my life. Piece by piece, the picture came into focus. I didn't confront her with this collection. Confrontation would have been the kind of theater she loved. The kind that lets a liar spin a new story and keep the crowd on her side. Instead, I moved, not with fanfare or drama, but with a quiet suitcase, a locked door, a forwarding address she would never know. I told our mutual friends that I was done with city life, that I was going home to regroup. I changed my number. It felt like disappearing, and in some small way it was. The apartment she thought she'd won was suddenly hers to empty into a silence that belonged to me. But I didn't leave the city. I rented a small plain apartment a few blocks away, one with thin walls and a window that faced the street she walked down every morning, close enough to keep an eye, far enough that I could breathe. From that apartment, I watched routines I had once been part of. The exact time she left for coffee, the way she checked her phone, the friends she texted when she thought no one was listening. I took notes like a detective who had stopped trusting easy answers. I mapped her patterns, the lies she repeated, the people she leaned on for cover. Everything became a chess match. I thought several moves ahead and practiced patience, the way other people practice patience at a gym. I rehearsed what I would say, and, more importantly, what I would not say. I lined up my evidence, my witnesses, my backups. I made sure there were no single points of failure. No he said, she said that could be shrugged away. I let her think she had the board. She kept playing the same small con games, trading my trust for quick gains. The calm around me wasn't empty. It was deliberate. The storm was coming, but it would not be blind fury. It would be precise, undeniable, and final. Ava had always been addicted to attention. It wasn't just something she liked. It was something she needed to survive. Compliments were her oxygen, admiration her drug. She built her life around the validation of others, and without it, she'd crumble. I knew that was her weakness, and that's exactly where I aimed. I created a fake social media profile, carefully constructed down to the smallest detail. Her name was Maya Clark, friendly, confident, with a small following that looked real enough to fool anyone scrolling too fast to think twice. I filled the feed with photos borrowed from royalty-free accounts, captions about motivation, lifestyle tips, little quotes about self-love. Maya looked like someone who could make Ava feel seen, someone who could give her what she craved most: admiration and opportunity. It started with a simple comment on one of Ava's posts. "Love your energy. You've got a great aesthetic. Let's connect." Within an hour, Ava had replied. 2 days later, she followed back. Within a week, Maya and Ava were chatting like old friends. I kept the tone light and supportive, telling her she had potential, asking about her work, pretending to be impressed by her so-called brand. I mirrored her interests, her slang, her rhythm. It didn't take long before Ava began to open up. What began as casual messages about collaborations soon turned into something deeper. Ava started gossiping, first about mutual acquaintances, then about me. She didn't realize she was telling me about myself. She bragged to Maya about how she had broken her naive roommate and used her like a puppet. She even laughed about how easy it was to manipulate people who, "I just want to help." Her words stung like fresh wounds reopening. But I didn't react. I kept typing sweet, encouraging replies. Every message, every screenshot, every voice note, I saved them all. Then she began boasting about her new scams. Selling fake online courses. Tricking small brands into paying her for non-existent promotions. Even posing as a charity volunteer to collect donations that went straight into her personal account. The confidence in her words was chilling. She felt untouchable, and that arrogance was the rope she didn't realize she was wrapping around her own neck. Every word was recorded. Every file was backed up. I organized everything. Messages, screenshots, transaction records, even timestamps of her activity. I built a case stronger than any excuse she could invent. But that wasn't enough. I needed to make sure when the truth came out, it couldn't be silenced or twisted. So I started reaching out to others. Quietly, carefully. I found people she had wronged. A girl she'd scammed out of a photography gig. A coworker she'd blamed for her own mistake. Even a small brand she'd stolen money from, under the pretense of a collaboration. Each of them had their own story, their own scars. And when I explained who I was and what I was doing, they didn't hesitate. They sent me proof. Screenshots, emails, voice notes, receipts. One by one, the puzzle pieces came together into a wall of undeniable truth. We formed a small group. People Ava had burned, united by betrayal. We compared stories, checked timelines, cross-verified evidence. By the end, it was overwhelming. No one could claim coincidence or misunderstanding. This wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern, a lifestyle built on deceit. When the wall of evidence was complete, I stared at it for hours. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Not the kind you beg for, but the kind you create with your own hands. Ava had spent months controlling every narrative, twisting every truth. But now, I was holding something she couldn't manipulate, couldn't delete, couldn't sweet talk away. And when everything was ready, I sent it to one place she could never reach, the truth itself. No rumors, no drama, no emotional outburst. Just cold, undeniable evidence shared with the people who mattered most. Her followers, her partners, and the very world she thought she had under her thumb. I didn't need to lie, exaggerate, or even speak. The proof spoke louder than any words I could ever say. For the first time, Ava's biggest strength, her hunger for attention, was about to become her greatest downfall. It was a Friday morning when everything began to unravel, when the carefully constructed life Ava had built started to collapse around her. I woke up to a flurry of notifications. At first, I thought it was spam, but then I saw it. A video posted under the name Maya, the friendly new persona I had crafted months ago. It was detailed, precise, and damning. Every lie she had told, every scam she had run, every fake profile she had used to manipulate people. It was all there, screenshot after screenshot, bank transactions, messages she thought she had sent in private, all laid bare for the world to see. The video spread like wildfire. Within hours, Ava's followers were leaving comments laced with disbelief and anger, calling her out for the fraud she had become. Brands she had worked with for partnerships and endorsements began dropping her one by one, deleting collaborations, unfollowing, and publicly announcing that they would no longer work with her. Even her family got wind of it. Her aunt sent me a message asking if it was true, and I ignored it. I wanted her to feel the full weight of what was coming. By mid-morning, her phone was blowing up. Calls, texts, notifications. All of them frantic, desperate. And then I started receiving dozens of calls from her. She didn't leave a single voicemail at first, just kept calling, over and over. I let it ring, letting the sound of her panic wash over me from a distance. After what felt like hours, I answered. Her voice broke instantly, high-pitched and trembling. Why are you doing this to me? She sobbed. There was genuine fear in her tone now, the kind of fear that doesn't lie. I stayed calm. I didn't yell. I didn't lecture. I didn't even let my voice shake. I didn't destroy you, Ava. I said slowly, each word deliberate. You destroyed yourself. I just turned on the lights so everyone could see. There was silence on the other end of the line. Long, heavy, unbroken silence. And then I heard it, the sound of her mask breaking. The confident, untouchable, charming Ava she had worn for so long had slipped, and in its place was a terrified, exposed woman who had nothing left to defend herself with. I could almost hear the realization echoing in her voice. The understanding that all the lies she had built her life on had finally caught up with her. That day, I didn't feel victory or glee. I felt something colder, sharper. Satisfaction in the truth finally emerging. Injustice being served in a way she could not twist, erase, or deny. For the first time in months, the tables had turned completely, and she had no choice but to face the consequences of every betrayal, every theft, and every manipulation she had ever committed. Her world had exploded, and all I had done was open the door for the truth to walk through. 2 weeks later, I received an invitation to a small podcast. Nothing flashy, just a local show that focused on personal stories and life experiences. They wanted me to share my roommate from hell story, and I agreed, but I spoke anonymously. I didn't mention names. I didn't give details that could trace back to me. I just told the story, the betrayal, the manipulation, the constant gaslighting, and the slow, creeping realization that someone I trusted had been using me. The episode went live, and to my surprise, it went viral. People connected with it instantly. Comments poured in from all over, sharing similar experiences, thanking me for speaking up, and expressing disbelief that someone could act so casually while destroying someone else's life. The emotion, the raw honesty of it, resonated more than I could have imagined. Here's the twist though. I didn't see it coming until the day of the next recording. Ava showed up. She hadn't been invited. She walked into the studio, eyes wide, makeup slightly smudged, a fake smile plastered over her face. She tried to act innocent, even a little vulnerable, crying softly, telling the host that she'd been misunderstood and painted in an unfair light. She played the victim, hoping the audience would sympathize. The host smiled politely, pretending to listen, then leaned toward the soundboard. "We have a clip to play," he said. The studio went quiet. My heart pounded, but I didn't need to be nervous. I knew what was coming. The clip played. It was Ava's own voice, recorded months earlier, laughing about how she scammed me, mocking my trust, calling me naive and easy to manipulate. The laughter echoed in the room, a sound that exposed everything she had tried to hide. Her face turned white, her lips parted, but no words came out. She froze in place, eyes darting around, realizing that everyone, the host, the guests, the crew, the audience, now saw her for who she truly was. Not the charming, innocent girl she had pretended to be, but a manipulative, calculated person who had used trust like it was a toy. For the first time, Ava had nothing left to say. The confidence, the excuses, the tears she had practiced so many times in front of mirrors. They were all gone. Silence filled the room, heavy and undeniable. And in that silence, I felt a strange sense of closure. The mask was gone, the truth was out, and the world had finally seen what I had known all along. It was shocking for everyone. Yes, but most of all, it was shocking for her. The one who had believed she could control the narrative. The one who thought she could escape the consequences of her actions. That day, she finally realized that the games she had played for months were over. After that day, Ava disappeared almost completely from social media. Her accounts were deleted or deactivated. Her followers left confused and murmuring. Some people said she had left the city, hoping to vanish without a trace. Others whispered that she was trying to start over somewhere else, under a new name, pretending her past never existed. But it didn't matter. Whatever she did, whatever small attempt she made to rebuild, the damage had already been done, not just to her reputation, but to the illusion of control she had clung to for so long. And me? I didn't celebrate. I didn't post inspirational quotes about triumph or betrayal. I didn't send out messages gloating about how she had finally been exposed. I stayed silent because my victory didn't need applause, and it didn't need validation from anyone else. It was quiet, personal, and complete. The satisfaction wasn't loud. It was in the knowledge that truth had been revealed, justice had been served, and I had regained control over my life without stooping to performative drama. I started to rebuild. I found a small, cozy apartment that felt like home rather than just a space to live. I furnished it with things that brought me comfort: soft lights, plants, a little desk where I could write and plan without fear of intrusion. I found a new job, one where people respected me for my work and not for the image I projected. I rebuilt my circle of friends, slowly, carefully, surrounding myself with people whose words and actions matched, who weren't hiding behind masks or manipulating for attention. Sometimes, though even years later, I think about Ava, not with anger, not with the bitter edge I once felt, but with a strange, almost quiet gratitude. She forced me to open my eyes, to see that trust could be both a gift and a vulnerability. She taught me to be observant, to document, to plan, and to understand people, not just by their words, but by their patterns and actions. Every tear I cried, every sleepless night I spent worrying about what she might do next, was a lesson that strengthened me, sharpened me, and prepared me for the future. The biggest lesson, though, was the one I carry every day. Not every smiling face is a friend. Some smiles are masks, hiding calculated intentions. Some voices are sweet, not because of kindness, but because of manipulation. And the most dangerous betrayals often come from the people closest to you. The ones who sit beside you in your home, who laugh with you at night, who pretend to understand you and care for you. Those betrayals cut the deepest, but surviving them and learning from them gives you a strength nothing else can. Now, my life is quieter, steadier, and more deliberate. I don't rush to trust, but I don't rush to fear either. I move with awareness, with care, with boundaries I didn't have before. Ava's shadow exists only as a reminder of what can happen when you let charm and kindness blind you, and as proof that patience, strategy, and truth are far more powerful than rage or drama. In the end, my revenge was never about humiliation or punishment. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind. And I did that completely, silently, without a word. And that, I realized, is the sweetest victory of all. If you ever find yourself betrayed, the first thing to remember is this: don't rush. Don't let anger or hurt push you into decisions you'll later regret. Revenge is tempting in the heat of betrayal, but it is rarely satisfying if acted on impulsively. The most powerful response is patience. Let your actions, your truth, and even your silence do the talking. Let the evidence speak louder than any argument, and let time reveal what words alone cannot. The world has a strange, almost poetic way of exposing reality. Lies, manipulation, and deceit may feel unstoppable in the moment, but they carry their own weight, and eventually that weight becomes too heavy to hide. People who seem untouchable, who smile and charm their way through life, will always stumble when their own actions catch up to them. Truth has a way of seeping out, quietly, persistently, until it can no longer be ignored. Masks, no matter how carefully crafted, eventually fall. The person who betrayed you will reveal themselves, either through arrogance, carelessness, or the natural consequences of their actions. And when that happens, it is not your responsibility to expose them with fury. It is your responsibility to remain steady, to protect yourself, and to let justice, in its own time, do its work. Betrayal is painful, yes, but it is also a teacher. It forces you to look closer at who you trust, how you give your loyalty, and what it means to truly protect yourself. And when you learn these lessons, you come out stronger, wiser, and unshakable. Proof that no matter how clever a betrayer may be, truth and integrity always have the final word. So, when someone betrays you, don't panic. Don't retaliate blindly. Stand firm. Document, observe, and let the world reveal the truth in its own way. Because in the end, masks always fall, and when they do, the light shines brighter than any anger ever could.